Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Followers, likes, double tap. Now they control your life.
What is going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to the 817 podcast, where we talk about the lovely city of Fort Worth, Texas. We get into politics, business, culture, news. If it impacts you as a Fort Worthian, we discuss it. We give you 3 short stories, 1 big story, and wins and losses. I'm with my co-host, and Zeta. We have a huge announcement to share today. What do we got?
So we have been teasing in the last couple of episodes about a big announcement and sharing with you that there are going to be some changes at the podcast. And so our big announcement is that we are adding video.
Here we go.
We will be on YouTube. Now I have to
Clock
worry
it.
about what I have on my body, clothing-wise, when we're recording this pod. Face for radio, as we have talked about. And then the second, even bigger and more important announcement is that we have another person joining us in all of this.
Yes.
Many of you are familiar with this person, Wesley Kirk.
Meet the 817 producer, everybody. Make some noise.
Hello, Wesley Kirk here. Prepared to hear my voice more than you probably want to.
And so today Wesley's here. We're practicing. We have video going right now just to get a test run. But the next one, you'll be able to have video as well among this experience. So many of you have been giving us that feedback to do so. And so be ready for that as we move forward. We just also had the 817 Gather. This has actually been a busy month for us, Ann. I mean, we've been redistricting. We're going to have some updates there. We just had the Gather where there was a lot of new people. So if you haven't been to the 817 Gather, please know it's every third Sunday where we all get together and connect with other progressives and people who want to make a difference here in Tarrant County while also having community. So I think we had a really good one just now at Nydia.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of times that we've run into each other out in the community because of the
You ain't
extra
lying.
gathering that we've been doing and advocating for things and giving people kind of tasks to do in the community. And so it feels like everywhere we go, we run into 817 pod people and gather people.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see. So let's go ahead and dive into short story number 1.
So our first short story is basically the milestone mark that the city of Fort Worth reached officially this week. Many of us have been thinking that we've hit 1 million, thought we'd hit 1 million in population here in Fort Worth. But now officially, according to mid-census data, we have officially reached 1 million people. So we have a Fort Worth Report article, monumental milestone, Fort Worth population officially exceeds 1 million. Cowtown has more boots on the ground this year, officially roping in a long expected milestone of more than 1 million residents. Look at all that Western
Pizzazz.
terminology. Okay.
And we passed Austin. That's
Yes.
like the big piece there.
And getting close to Jacksonville,
Well-
Florida. They're 10, so we are 11. But technically, I think some people are already speculating that we might already be 10.
And that's where, Austin James, a friend of the show, been on the show. Now that we're going video, I don't know if Austin would like to be on video, but you know what I mean. On the Discord, he shared some really insight. So also another thing is we have our Discord where a lot of people collaborate, share, and analyze data. So Austin is one of the best number storytellers, I think, in our city. And he was talking about how, are we actually headed to past Jacksonville at the 10th place? Most likely, he looks at the data from July 24th, and he said Jacksonville added 1,364 people per month from 23 to 24, while Fort Worth added 1,954 people. So multiply those numbers by 10 months to get to May 25, where we are today. That would technically make Fort Worth bigger than Jacksonville. So that's a cool part as well. So with all of that, I mean, I have 2 big concerns. Number 1 is Fort Worth really ready to act like a top 10 city? Are we really truly wanting to act like a 1 million person populated city? Because if you look at our city budget, if you look at how we roll here, our city budget is not even in the top 25 of cities. And so we're wanting, and we're spread out larger than other cities. So when you look at transportation, when you look at health, when you look at all the parts that play to being this big, it doesn't seem like our officials or our budgets and how we communicate are prepared to really handle this kind of growth.
Yeah, I think that the complaint that comes up over and over and over again when we talk about how quickly we're growing and how big we're getting is that what is really important to people is that we remain this friendly small town feeling. And so what people have had a hesitancy to do in their efforts to try to continue to hang on to that small town feel and friendliness is we haven't planned for the things that are necessary to keep the quality of life for 1 million people. But I was glad to see in the article that they flat out said, Chris Nettles said, as a board member of Trinity Metro, we need transit and we need to approach this in a better way with more dollars to go to transit. So to your point about the budget not being as big as it needs to be for a city as the size we are, that's the battle. That's the push and pull, is that we're constantly acquiescing to people who don't want to pay more taxes, but want more services. And the only way a city provides services is with tax dollars. So we've concentrated a ton on reducing the tax rate, reducing the tax rate, reducing the tax rate. And because of that, you don't have the dollars that you need in order to deliver the services that 1 million people require.
Yeah. And our big story today is with Jared Howard, who's a part of the National Juneteenth Museum, and he talks about the economic engine of Tarrant County and Fort Worth and why we need to get historic Southside ready to be a part of the whole pie as we are here with 1 million people. But I guess the argument and where I feel like they feel that everything's okay in this situation is that Fort Worth is growing. We're still doing Panther Island. We're still having Texas A&M develop the South, the Main Street area. We're having Hillwood do Alliance. Like, how do they want to rely on public-private partnerships, which is always going to be a part of the formula. But I feel like, how do we articulate there's just some services that aren't meant to be profit-driven? So those services are still going to be needed. And man, I'm looking at some of these city budgets. I mean, you got Detroit, $3.6 billion. That's $1 billion more than ours. You have Philadelphia, 7.9. You have Boston, Massachusetts, 4.9. Almost twice the size of ours. These places are smaller than us, denser than us. So for some reason, obviously, like, they're in more blue states, they're in more progressive areas, but the math to me that makes this hard is that not only are we by population bigger than them, we are less dense than them. So that means even the cost to get these services that they have are also going to be more expensive, but yet we have half the budget as these people who have half the size.
The combination of being a state that is very tied to property rights and allowing people to do with their property what they want and not restrict people puts us in the position of allowing people to develop their property in a way that is hard to serve when it comes to what the government provides. And then those people move into those areas that are farther out that don't have those services, and then they want to insist on the city providing those services to them. And then it is a very expensive endeavor to run a water line, run a sewer line, provide a community center, provide police and fire response time, run buses or transit of some sort out to those areas. And so we're just not doing it, is what we are doing. We are just touting the growth and talking rah-rah how fast we're growing and how people are still moving here. But then we listen to the voices that say, don't build any more apartments. Don't build any more density in places that would be completely and totally appropriate to have that more dense population and would be easier to serve with all of those services if we did add that housing there. And so where I see us going is we keep pointing to the other places that grew more quickly than us that we're now surpassing. And we say we don't want to make the same mistakes that they made, that we don't want to find ourselves in a situation where Austin is, where they don't have other ways to get around town and you're stuck in traffic all day long because you just have highways that you've tried to expand the lanes on. We keep saying that we don't want to do those things, but I don't know if we're concretely doing or taking the steps or funding the things that will keep us from making those same mistakes.
And something else that I think is really interesting of this conversation is when you look at in Tarrant County, Fort Worth actually dominated the growth. And I'm going again off of the data Austin shared with us. He said almost none of the suburbs showed any particular high growth. Arlington added the most at 2,469 people, but that's still under 1%. Saginaw had the highest growth with 2.87%. And then Mansfield added 1,740 residents, North Richland Hills. But when you look at South Lake, 134 people. Grapevine, 58. Keller, -5. Bedford, -6. Hearst, -89. Euless, -105. So what this to me is telling me is like, now when you look at like Texas's boom over the last 3 decades, the aha was big house in the burbs, affordable. But then what happened was big house in the burbs with nice schools. But then what happens is everyone has done that, and now that's has basically tapped out. And these places are actually almost like gated communities, but gated suburbs that can't actually grow or produce more growth about how they are ran and how they are serviced. And so Fort Worth is actually showcasing that not only is now their cities are in a problematic place, because those cities are not just dealing with property issues, they're dealing with like school funding issues. Like some of these nice areas are having school funding issues.
Well, a lot of people moved out there that don't want to increase the taxes on anything. And so when they got popular and a bunch of people moved out there and the school districts grew, they needed to build more things for those people, and they vote down bonds on a pretty consistent basis. And so that's where they get stuck. And then they're not going to be the places that people want to go anymore. And it seems like those numbers kind of indicate that they're not growing anymore. Whereas we are, but we're also still not putting money into budgets that make our community centers better, the aging community centers and things that we have, improving those, keeping them up so that they're not deteriorating. Building new, we're doing some of that because there's been a few, police stations, community centers, libraries built in the more far-flung areas to try to get that kind of up to speed for those services. But we're constantly playing catch up. And if all of our growth is single-family subdivisions, those single-family subdivisions do not bring in the tax dollars to pay the amount that is necessary to provide all those services. So you're going to have to be leeching off of the tax dollars that are paid in the higher density areas and the mixed use areas, and then putting that money into services in those far-flung areas.
And so what we could possibly, in my opinion, see in someone way more understanding of this could tell the story arc of how the death of the DFW Metroplex suburbs is not a strategy for growth. And like, it's time that we now actually have data and population growth data showing that if this continues, that you just build and they will come eventually has a stop, and it's dysfunctional in the long term, because now we're going to have true data on that, plus doing this for 30 years. So we can stop it and be an example for a city to start investing in city kind of services and community-based services that reduce the cost of property, that reduces the cost of, other parts that we have to pay because everything's so privatized. We could then maybe model what a future looks like. And I think when we get to hear Jared Howard's presentation, he talks a lot about this possibility with us about acting more like a fully community-connected, comprehensive city.
Yeah, and I think there's other organizations that are doing some of this work, identifying cities that are doing it better budget-wise. Strong Towns has been identifying cities across the country who are basically sitting on the edge of a cliff of financial insolvency because they have based all of their decisions on growth continuing, and it's just stopping, and so they're going to have a problem. And so they're very much sharing with people kind of a Strong Towns mentality of a different way to do it. And we've had Strong Towns people come to Fort Worth and analyze where we are and what we're doing and the type of development that we're incentivizing. And we probably should have those folks back to talk to us during this time that we're working on a comprehensive plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the second concern also kind of goes in the short story number 2. And that second concern to me is, man, the negative of this news, and it could have been my loss maybe, is we're trying to talk about keeping the maps the same at Tarrant County, where Tim O'Hare is trying to racistly gerrymander our current county lines. And now I feel like with a story like this coming out on the paper, which is going to get touted by the mayor, it's going to get touted by leadership, it's going to give them the only thing that they keep saying at these public hearings, and that is we're a growing community and we can't use old data. All these people are coming and we have to do this now. What is your take to that?
Well, they are using old data. So they keep harkening back and saying that we haven't redistricted since 2010, but that's not, we haven't changed the maps since 2010, but there was a full redistricting process analysis that was done after the 2020 census, at which time, even with all the growth we've had, the number of population in each of the 4 districts was not different enough from each. It was within the margin of error, the difference in population that you can have before you need to start moving lines around, that they chose to keep the same maps that they had. So to the point of this saying, oh, we're growing, we are growing. And they've been saying that at all the meetings. Nobody's arguing that we're not growing. But the maps that they created was using the 2020 data. So that is not new data. They're not using the new data that came out in this mid-census time frame, which is also not the best data for doing redistricting. If you're redistricting, the census data is the most accurate data, and that's why they don't encourage folks to do mid-census, even when you come out with these numbers. But this group has not done these, didn't use these numbers. They started talking about this before this was available. They've already said that they are only looking at 2020 data, and then they're not even looking at all the data. They're just looking at voting, and they're not looking at anything else. And it's been other folks that have shared maps that reflect all of the things that true, transparent, thorough redistricting takes into consideration.
Yep, and we should give an update kind of where we are with redistricting. A lot has happened, and I feel like what's great is the 817 Pod and the 817 Gather, we've been able to really be a part of this big coalition to raise awareness of what's happening. So really quickly, Judge Tim O'Hare has quickly produced in less than 2 months a proposal to redistrict Tarrant County. And remember, we're looking at growth. Tarrant County, if it was a state, would be larger than 16 states. And this guy is trying to gerrymander our lines so that the minority voices are not heard. Today, Tarrant County is 57% Black, Asian, Hispanic communities, and yet he wants to gerrymander it where all the minority voices are put into precinct 1, where today, if you look at the 4 precincts, the majority are minority in 3 of the 4. And so what you have today on our commissioner's court is 2 African-American leaders. You have 1 Hispanic leader, and then as well as 2 white guys as well. So that to me is like, now he wants to say, hey, I actually want to limit the voices of people who don't look like me, go to the same churches as me, who acts like me. And so now he's trying to move precinct 2. He's taking over double digits of the minority population and packing them into precinct 1. And this is going to be very dangerous. And so what has happened is, in his 2-month period, is 4 public hearing opportunities that we get to show up to. The first one was the 13th of May. The second one was the 14th of May in Como. The last one was this Saturday, May 17th in Commissioner Simmons' district in Arlington. And the final one, which will be Matt Krause, is the 21st, which is the day right after Commissioner's Court. And we have been to roughly all of them, at least together. One of us has been to one of the 3 that's already happened. I went to the one in Azle. You went to the one in Como. And
also the one in Arlington.
So over that time, what have you seen in the public hearings? What's your observations? What are some things we need to let people know on the pod?
While we have been running into people who follow the pod and people who gather at the Gather at various meetings, and there's been incredible turnout. That is one thing. There were 150 people signed up to speak in Arlington yesterday, on Saturday.
And over 100 at Como too?
I believe so. That was a fire chief situation probably happening. That room was very, very full. In Arlington, they had overflow in the hallway. They had a television out there where people could be. But even with all of that being said, we have a story to share from the Fort Worth Report that Tarrant residents say that their voices are going unheard in the fierce debate over redistricting. And to your point of who's been showing up at these meetings and who has been listening at these meetings, you were at the one in Azle, where the commissioner who scheduled that meeting was not there.
Yeah, and Azle is 50 minutes from where we're sitting right now, and he represents people in this area where we are right now. And so we drive up 50 minutes to go to this meeting, in the back of a school with not a lot of signage. And of the 25 people who spoke, 21 of them spoke against this redistricting process. And so, to be clear, this is in a Republican precinct. But what was horrific about it, not only did we all drive out of there, they literally started the meeting like this. Welcome. You can now start your public comments. There was no updates from the PILF people who we spent $30,000 on. Mr. Nixon was not there. They had a young intern there who looks like he's applying for his first job or going to let you into a movie theater. And he didn't say anything or comment. There was no, Manny Ramirez wasn't there. And, some people who spoke, try to protect Manny Ramirez were saying, oh, there was a flight delay. Something happened to his flight. We have technology. We have Zoom. We have these things. And so to even a simple getting on a phone and calling them and putting the mic next to the phone and him just saying, I am so sorry, guys, I am not there. I wish I can be there. Something happened. So that is the most lousy excuse. And it's unacceptable because we pay this man over $200,000 a year to represent Precinct 4, who just drove 50 minutes to hear from you and get an update from a consulting organization who we're paying $30,000 for.
Well, and I don't know why we should be so surprised, because at the last commissioners court meeting that we went to, it was on the agenda as a briefing from the consultant. And the judge got up and said when the 4 meetings were going to be, that people could give public comment, and basically gave a briefing. And then the consultant got up and said, oh, that was very good what you just said. I want to commend the county for all the work that they're doing. We haven't really done anything because we haven't even produced these maps ourselves. These are not our maps. These are the county commissioner's maps. And he gave no briefing. He basically said that they were not his maps, that they had not drawn the maps, that they hired somebody else to draw the maps based on what the commissioners had asked for. And so all these maps were produced before there was any public input. There's no mapping apparatus for any public to create maps and give them to them. And so I don't know what those people have been doing with their $30,000, but they must have a high hourly rate that they're charging, because they just, and then the one who came to the commissioners meeting in Como, they sent the young guy that I guess was at the meeting in Azle, and the room was very, very full, but it was made clear that they would have a chair for him at the front so that he could come in and hear what everybody had to say. He declined. And then I did see him come into the room when it got a little less crowded, but he wasn't going to speak. And then what we heard at the Arlington meeting was that the principal partner had said he was going to be there, but that he wasn't going to present anything. And then he apparently wrote and said that because of what had happened in Como, he wasn't feeling safe. And so he just didn't come to the meeting in Arlington.
Which is also clearly racist, off the bat. When we want to talk about if we have the data for the Voting Rights Act, quote unquote, if there's he said that I was unsafe, how interesting that you were unsafe because what happened at the minority precinct 1, who we were there. Yeah,
everybody was safe.
Yeah, everyone was safe. No, we were just chanting no more maps. No more maps. And Roderick Miles, commissioner of Precinct 1, says, hey, we're going to respect you. You have a seat here. You can sit here and talk. No one's going to do anything. And so that is an example of man, these people have not been around their constituents and the ever-changing diversity of our county and city. And they're afraid to even sit in rooms with people who don't look like them. This man is a 6'5", 265-pound individual who's saying he's afraid of his life. This is how disconnected and how they look at passionate Black and brown communities. They don't see it as voices standing up. They see it as threats to their existence.
So while this might not seem like a separate story because it ties into the redistricting story that we've been talking about, there is an element that is new, and that is that many people during this entire process have expressed frustration with the lack of voices of other elected officials who represent overlapping constituencies with the folks in the county that are making these decisions. There has been very little up to just recently, very little being said by our state representatives and our federal representatives and our local city representatives. Even some of the county commissioners, well, they definitely have not been sharing very much at all. So this article with the Fort Worth Report highlights the fact that the Arlington mayor has instructed the city to investigate the legality of the ongoing Tarrant redistricting effort. So Mayor Ross has tasked city staff with investigating the legality and ethics of the Tarrant County plan to redraw the commissioner precincts mid-census. And apparently he's spoken to some of the other elected mayors in Tarrant County and has offered to share the results of the findings that his staff are looking into. But at first, he was basically the only one. And then at the Arlington meeting, there were several state representatives that attended that meeting, and actually federal as well. So Mark Vesey was there, Chris Turner was there, Tony Tinderholt was there. So there was some attendance by some of those state folks in favor and opposition. Again, majority opposition to the redistricting. But I think that there's now been some question as to, with Mayor Ross standing up and questioning this, whether or not the city of Fort Worth is going to step up and talk about this. So I haven't seen any articles about Fort Worth, but we do know that there is an item on the agenda for Tuesday.
So this Fort Worth resolution that you mentioned that is proposed for the next city council meeting was started and ignited by Chris Nettles, and he got four other signatures from other council members, and that was Jeanette Martinez, Deborah Peoples, Jared Williams, and Elizabeth Beck. That now allowed it to get to city council to vote on it. And this resolution is opposing the county's redistricting efforts.
And I think the resolution itself goes into some detail as to the negative impacts that redistricting could have, specifically with the relationship between the county and the city, because there's a lot of projects that are financed with both county dollars and city dollars. And each of those county commissioners have teams of infrastructure improvement folks and people working on various projects that have been funded out of the various commissioners' courts specific geographic areas with the staff that they have. And there's some of those that have been proven, but if that thing would be moved into another district, that could negatively impact or change what people choose to. Similarly to what we are seeing at the federal level, there were things that people thought were going to be funded with federal grants that then the new administration came in and is pulling some of those back. So again, to the point of, we are not analyzing all of the outcomes that redrawing lines on a map actually mean. Yeah. There's been a lot of discussion at two of the meetings that we've gone to, specifically the one in Arlington, where they've gone into the details of things that other folks are just completely unaware of. There's people who are unaware that redistrict isn't even being proposed and happening. And then there are people that don't understand that this isn't just lines on a map. This is locations of maintenance facilities. This is roads that are being taken care of by Precinct 1 that would no longer be in Precinct 1. Valuable assets that are in Precinct 1 that are being removed from Precinct 1. So to some of the comments that are made by our guest today about valuable economic development assets, this is very much packing all the votes of one group of people into one district, diluting their voice, and removing all of the assets that that district currently has and putting them into the other districts.
Yeah, and that is a great point, and I think that is where we need to see what happens on Tuesday. This could be something where we could really start talking about what kind of action to happen. Unfortunately, both of these meetings, this city meeting and the county meeting, happens on May 20th at the same exact time. And so what I'm going to look at here is, how does Carlos Flores vote? How does the people who didn't sign but shouldn't sign? What does the mayor say? Because this to me is a really pivotal point to see what kind of council we're going to have moving forward. I know we still have Mia Hall and Daryl Davis, who have also shared their voices or been attending these meetings as well. What's going to be the makeup, and what ring is someone kissing in the sense of who they're actually standing up for?
We started off this conversation with all the places that we have physically been lately on this topic of redistricting. And there are opportunities for folks to join us in this effort and have their voices be heard if they are also fired up about this mid-census redistricting. So the county commissioners are meeting in a regularly scheduled meeting on the 20th at 10 a.m. And there is a briefing on the agenda for redistricting, which you can sign up for, but you must sign up for by 5 o'clock on Monday night in order to speak at that. You can also sign up to just give a written comment, but we're suggesting that as many people as possible sign up to speak and be there at the meeting. And then, unfortunately, the city of Fort Worth, with the resolution that we mentioned and the proposed resolution, that is on the agenda for a regular city council meeting. However, this week's city council meeting is a day meeting, so it is also at 10 o'clock on Tuesday instead of the evening time that we meet more regularly. So 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the city council is meeting. This resolution that has been proposed by 5 of the council members is on the agenda. So that's another opportunity for folks to show up and speak in support of the resolution against the redistricting. So the final public hearing for redistricting that is hosted by the county is Matt Krause's meeting, which is going to be held on May 21st at 6 p.m. at the Gary Fickus Northeast Courthouse, which is located at 645 Grapevine Highway in Hurst, Texas. So if you want to get in on the fun of attending all these public meetings and sharing your opinion, those are the opportunities to do that in person.
There's actually an additional time to show up, which is June 3rd, which is the day that the Commissioners Court is going to vote on a map and if they're going to be for this redistricting. Now, I'm going to try to make all three events. And to me, I think the Fort Worth City Council one is massively important because what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about where's the growth? Where is the growth? It's in Fort Worth. And are we going to let the county hijack the city? Because if you look at, I just went down the population lines. There's negative growth in South Lake. Right? Negative growth in these suburbs. And so if Michael Crane can count parking lots in Mercy Culture, he can count where the population moved in our city. So don't let the county hijack our city. Number two is the county's court. And I think that's all about the Voting Rights Act and all about the racist gerrymandering that's happening, that the data shows. The other pieces that you can make a point at, Chris Tackett just posted a map showing that really the county lines actually match the city lines. So no city is actually broken up on its county for the most part. This new one would make Arlington have like 3 different commissioners. So it's really another piece that I think we could hit on. And then the 21st meeting, it may sound like, why do that one if all these important meetings are happening right before it? It's because the last 3 public hearings, it's been majority against redistricting on all of them. And that was even Manny Ramirez, where only 3 people really spoke against it in a Republican precinct. Matt Krause is probably going to show up. And this is a guy who was defending 10 Commandments in our public schools just now. And so I think he shows up. I think Tim O'Hare potentially shows up. They might try to show some kind of pro-redistricting people being there and that there's actually a voice for them. But if we can win that one as well, we can then walk into June 3rd saying every public hearing you had was 100, majority against this, and it wasn't even close. And so I think that one is also really important for us to hit.
And I think if you are unable to do these things in person, there are other opportunities to make sure that your voice is heard. So Tarrant County Young Democrats has a letter writing campaign. There are over 1,500 letters have been written so far. And so that is still available. And we can add that link in the show notes so that you can share your opinions through that letter writing campaign as well.
All right, so it's time to move into the big story where we have a guest that we're excited to have back, and that is the CEO of the National Juneteenth Museum, Jared Howard. He's going to talk about their inaugural festival that's going to be on Juneteenth weekend. So here is Jared Howard.
First off, let me say thank you all for having me. Really exciting to be back. I don't know how many people get invited back, so I feel pretty good about being invited back. But a lot has changed. I think last time we were together, we might have raised $15, $18, $20 million. We've raised $40 million now, and we think that will be 55, 60 before the end of the year.
Wow.
Of a $70 million campaign, so we're almost there. It's really exciting because For the years that I've been working on this, many people, if not most people, thought it was a pipe dream that we couldn't fund. And so the fact that we are on the cusp of $60 million is pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would love to know what were the economic engines or things that played to allow the messaging to land, because obviously you're kind of the storyteller, telling it to the people who we need them to buy in.
Yeah, there's a confluence of things, right? So Juneteenth is growing in popularity by leaps and bounds. We all know that it is a national holiday now, thanks in no small part to the venerable Miss Opal Lee, right, and her forebears. So Juneteenth in its popularity, it has been really good for us because now people are curious about this. What does this holiday mean? Why does it exist? And I would suggest that most Americans couldn't articulate what Juneteenth is, why it's significant. And so they're looking for places to learn, right? And what better place to learn than a museum, right? And so as a consequence, people know that America needs to learn about Juneteenth. And so as a consequence, what's the best place? One of the best ways to teach America is through a museum. So really good for us in that regard. The timing is beautiful. It's just time. It's just good time. So we say within the organization, it's time, right, which is the declaration that now is the time. We're not going to wait another 3 or 4 years. It's time. And so that's manifested in a number of different ways.
So some of the events that you've had in the past have been incredibly popular, and I think that has grown and built up a synergy. I think when you announce who the speakers are, or even before you announce who the speakers are, you get a lot of excitement and people buying tickets, and it's selling out. So I know that you've done 3, I think, with individual speakers, and I think, I'm not sure I went to all 3. I think I might have gone to all 3. But we're doing something a little different this year. Is that?
We are.
All right.
We
Can you
are.
tell us a little bit about the plans for this year?
Yes, indeed. Happy to do so. We are still doing the Speaker Series event, but the Speaker Series event this year is a part of a larger event, a festival, right? So because we don't have a building yet, it's important that we stay in the public eye, right? And one of the ways we can do that is with programs. And so we're presenting and producing this year the inaugural version of Freedom Vibes, the National Juneteenth Festival. It's a 4-day festival that'll start on Juneteenth with a speaker series, right? And to be sure, we're bringing in the venerable Ambassador Andrew Young as our speaker this year. That's Thursday, June 19th at 3 o'clock. That, of course, happens after Miss Opal's Walk, which launches Juneteenth every year. So we'll start the day at Tarrant Field with Miss Opal's Walk. We'll come and hear Ambassador Young at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the venerable historic I.M. Terrell High School. And then we'll close Thursday out with a concert at the beautiful Bass Hall with a group called Orchestra Noir. They are, for those that may not be aware, the term noir is French, I believe, for black. And so they are a black orchestra, and they're going to take over Bass Hall. But I have to say, you all, that they are not the prototypical orchestra or symphony. They are playing all the music that the culture likes to sing along with, right? So think Can You Talk by Tevin Campbell. Think Before I Let Go by Frankie Beverly and Mays. Those are the songs that they play, and so you combine the culture with the beautiful artistry that they produce, and you get a really great evening. So we're really thrilled to have them in Fort Worth. In fact, they are selling out shows across the nation, and so to have them in Fort Worth is a pretty cool deal. And then Friday night, which will be June 20th, we go back to Bass Hall for what we're calling Nostalgia Night, and that's where we have the Mighty OJs, right, who are still together after 60 years. And the Whispers. And we're really excited about the Whispers because many people don't know, but the twins, who are the leaders of the Whispers, are actually from Fort Worth. Oh, wow. Right? So it'll be a full circle moment for them. Yeah, they're Fort Worthians, and so they're excited to be coming home. Saturday, we're having a block party in Evans Plaza, right there, a block away from where the museum is going to be built. And then Sunday, we're having what we're calling a gospel hour, where we're going to bring 5 of the largest choirs from the DFW area to the Potter's House of Fort Worth. So all of that combines to make the inaugural version of Freedom Vibes to help us stay in the public eye and to bring some quality programming, cultured programming, if you will, to Fort Worth, because we haven't seen this in decades.
Yeah. You mentioned the Bass Hall, and I think there's been a lot of discussions about how downtown is going and Sundance Square, but I think there has to be a lot of credit that the Bass family and the diversity downtown and the diversity of activity downtown. What have you seen in the possibility of like getting more people to Evans, Rosedale Plaza, how do we interact and communicate the functions that happen downtown to the access as you think about how do we move the people who's been showing up downtown to get them over to the area where the National Juneteenth Museum is going to be?
Yeah, so great question. In fact, internally, we talk often about how do we bring the party to the people, right? Because oftentimes, even with the speaker series, we're asking the people to come out of their communities, to go somewhere and get some of the content that we're producing. And that, to be sure, EJ, is why the block party is actually going to be in the neighborhood, right? Right there on Evans Avenue. For those that may not be aware that are listening to us right now, Evans Avenue and the Evans-Rosedale corridor represents the epicenter of Black life in Fort Worth. If you rewind the clock a couple of hundred years to post-emancipation days, people like William Madison McDonald curated this neighborhood, right, for Black people because they couldn't live anywhere else. And he had two things that Black people generally in that era didn't have access to. He had capital and he had land, right? And so he loaned capital and gave land away to people that looked like me, right, and created this historic Southside neighborhood, which is still being preserved today. And so we're really excited about bringing programming back there. To be sure, we're excited about building the museum there, right? People often ask, you didn't ask me this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. People often ask, why didn't we choose to build the museum in the Cultural District, which is wrought with world-class museums? Well, because the subject matter is what it is. And as a result of that, there's no better place for it than the historic South Side. And then you think about the economic impact of a national museum and the programs that'll be inside the building, sharing the campus with the museum. The economic impact of that will be such that the historic South Side needs it, whereas the cultural district does not, right? The cultural district is already robust with activity. We're seeing new buildings being built every day. I'm really excited about what John Goff is doing there and making it even better than it used to be. So they don't necessarily need us. I have a conversation with my friend Chris, who's our CEO of the National Medal of Honor Museum in Arlington, and we talk about the economic impact of our projects. And I jokingly say that ours will be more significant. And the reason for that is because, quite frankly, the entertainment district of Arlington doesn't need the National National Medal of Honor Museum, whereas the historic South Side of Fort Worth does. Right, so the impact of the work that we're doing is really significant. So I know I gave you a lot of banter.
No,
there,
but that's
yeah,
and the greatest questions are the ones that are not asked. So it's what you feel called to talk about in your soul. So I appreciate that. Could you actually dive more into like the, for some of our newer listeners, who maybe started hearing us after Keller ISD or the redistricting stuff? What can you give kind of a history of Black Fort Worth history and what people should know, maybe in like a 2 to 5 minute kind of story?
Yeah, so where we're building the museum is in an area that is formerly called or referred to as the historic South Side, right? Now, the South Side, as we know it historically, is a lot bigger than the historic South Side. You've got Morningside and Hillside, and I know you know that. But the historic South Side is bound by Rosedale on the south, bound by Vickery on the north, bound by I-35 on the west, and 287. Or actually not 287, but Riverside Drive on the east. And so if you think about that, I said it's bound by Rosedale, right, which is State Highway 180, right? It's bound by I-35, which is an interstate highway, the NAFTA highway. It's bound by Vickery, which is abuts I-30. That hasn't always been the case. In fact, I'll give you a quick story. Miss Opal Lee, whose childhood home was at 940 East Annie, went to high school at I.M. Terrell, actually went to school at I.M. Terrell. When she went to school at I.M. Terrell, she walked to school.
That would be a treacherous walk
Absolutely today. And the reason, you're absolutely right. The reason for that is because there's literally an interstate highway between her home and I.M. Terrell. And so you literally have to cross, a 10-lane highway. And so this neighborhood has been, for whatever reason, earmarked by its boundaries, whether you think that's positive or negative. But if history is any indicator, the byproduct of that earmarking is the dilapidated neighborhood that we see today and economically destitute neighborhood that we see today. So, when you talk about things like redistricting, it is a very sensitive issue, not just for myself, but people in communities like this one. It's a big deal happening right now, and people have got some really strong perspectives about it happening.
Yeah, and with redistricting, there's a lot of different, strong Black communities, even East Side or Como or even Crowley. Now, how do you feel today? 3 of the 4 seats have a population where the minority is in the majority, meaning Black, Brown, Hispanic. Precinct 1 and Precinct 2 is currently represented by 2 Black leaders. And so what is you thinking of the impact of, as you think about this, even at the county level? I know, and what I love is so much of your energy, so much of that funding is going right there in the block that needs it most. But how do you think it brings the county together?
Yeah, the redistricting thing is really, really tricky because what we don't want, what most people don't want to be, is what's the word I'm looking for?
Disenfranchised.
There you go. That's a good word. And people have fought for decades, even centuries, to make sure that that's not their reality. And to the extent that there are some that think that this effort to redistrict is an effort to disenfranchise people, it's really, really frustrating. And here's what I can tell you. People want strong voice, right? People do not want to be silenced. And to many people in this city and in this county, it feels to them like they are being silenced. And that breeds frustration, right? I don't have a particular take on that we can talk about here, but I can tell you that the people I represent in many instances, and specifically the people in this neighborhood, are really frustrated by what appears to be happening right now. And they're really pushing back with everything that they've got to make sure it doesn't happen. So it is really interesting. I have become an ambassador for the people in the community where we're building the museum. I spend a great deal of time with them. I listen to them. And as such, it's difficult for me to have a different perspective than theirs. And so it is painful to think for myself and the people that I represent here in the historic South Side that their voices would be quelled, right, in 2025. And that's what many of them believe, right? So it's unfortunate, but it's a reality.
To your point about bringing economic development to the area, I know there was recently an article about, I think the final funding came through for the Evans-Rosedale urban village. And that developer has been in the community, meeting with the community, talking about what it is that the community wants to see in that area. Because the city years ago came in and did some infrastructure improvements and have put a few city facilities there, a library and a neighborhood services. But that area is about to kind of see a lot of growth too, right alongside the museum being built. So I assume that there's some collaboration there.
Absolutely. I engage Kevin and his team at Royal Capital pretty frequently. We are not formally, but informally partnering, right? Because both entities, I will say, have the same goal in lifting up this community that's been destitute for a number of decades. And so, yeah, we're excited about them coming. We're excited about the collaboration, and we're excited about the future. This is a big deal.
Yeah, they're bringing housing. They're bringing, possibly some grocery type elements, which is something the community has voiced at every meeting that I've ever been to about what is lacking there. Being cut off from kind of the economic and the hospital district with the highways that you described on all sides.
You think about the irony of 76104 having the state's shortest life expectancy rate, yet it's a stone's throw away from the medical district, right? It's heartbreaking when you think about that. And so all of those things are top of mind for Royal Capital and for the National Juneteenth Museum. So we're really, really excited about what the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years look like in this part of Fort Worth. And really excited about bringing some of the energy to the east side of I-35. For far too long, I-35 has been the psychological and physical barrier between east and west. And we are literally working to bridge the gap that exists between the two.
Yeah, I know that the Near Southside Inc. has 2 projects that are looking at like the underpasses that connect kind of on to that side and going under 35 because it's not a pleasant place to go. You could walk. My office is right there, so I have walked all in that area, but making that connection better and having it be a more pleasant connection.
Yeah, there needs to be the gap that exists is significant. It's wide, and it needs to be bridged. And I really think that the work that's happening now will help with that. Quite frankly, the city of Fort Worth is too big to have that big a gap that close to the CBD, right? We just learned formally. You all probably knew we've had 1 million people for a while, right? But formally, the census says Fort Worth has surpassed the $1 million mark, and gone are the days when a neighborhood like this in the core of the city should be that distinctively different from one that's adjacent to it. And so we're going to shift that paradigm with the work that Royal Capitals is doing, along with what we're doing with the National Juneteenth.
You mentioned you're excited for the next 5 to 10 years, what it's going to do. I'm interested to get your take because you grew up here.
Yeah.
You have kids now who are they in their teens or 20s?
Early 20s.
Early
Yep.
20s.
I'm getting old.
That means I am
You still got your hair though. You beat me out there. So I think I would love your kind of opinion on like what does being black in Fort Worth feel like and be like 10 years from now.
Yeah.
And then thinking about your own child, what it meant.
I love that.
And then what it means for your kids. Because in my mind, I don't know if it's chronologically in order of your kids have it that great right now, even if there's internet and maybe higher qualities of living in certain ways, but in the sense of empowerment, maybe, if they're graduating college right now, I think it's a hard time to graduate college with so much uncertainty at the federal level and everyone thinks. So I just love to get your take on the arc. For you.
Yeah. So that was loaded. So let me see if I can simplify that a little bit. Being black in Fort Worth is at the core of the question that you asked me. Yeah. So it should not surprise anybody that's watching us or listening to us that I've been black all my life, right? And I've been in Fort Worth all my life, except for when I went to UNT. It's way far away in a city called Denton, right? And so being black in Fort Worth has been an arc, to be sure. When I was born in Fort Worth, I was born in the 70s. Right, and I've got deep roots in the city of Fort Worth. My great-great-grandmother founded Stop 6, Amanda Davis, and so I grew up with a great deal of pride in the city of Fort Worth. I didn't know anything different until I went to Denton, and the people I went to school with in Denton, most of the friends that I hung out with were from Houston, Dallas, and they didn't have a great perspective on what Fort Worth was. In fact, that we didn't even register on the social scale, and I'll tell you, it was when I got to UNT that this indignation started to grow in me about how other people saw Fort Worth. It pissed me off, if I can be candid, that they had their Dallas-Houston conversations and we weren't a part of it. And so it was then that the light was lit, the candle was lit in my soul about making people recognize the greatness that I believed was in Fort Worth. And so for all those years, I've been looking for ways to make Fort Worth more attractive. And let me qualify that most of my friends at UNT were black. I'm a member of a fraternity, right, a black Greek-lettered organization, and so many of my friends were black, and so the fact that they didn't think highly of Fort Worth was frustrating to me, and so for all those years, I won't tell you how many it's been, I've been looking for ways to make Fort Worth more attractive to people like myself, and so this National Juneteenth project is in part born of that indignance, because I want other people to think greatly of Fort Worth as well, specifically other black people to think greatly of Fort Worth. And right now, they don't. In fact, many of the black people that were born and raised in Fort Worth get the hell out of Fort Worth as quickly as they possibly can. And in many instances, they don't come back. Well, the reason for that, at least from Jared's perspective, is because Fort Worth has lots of black people. It doesn't have lots of black culture, right? Or it doesn't have a center of black culture. Well, that dynamic is going to change with NJM, and that's why NJM is not just a museum, right? We've got a food hall there. So, the greatest conversations are sometimes had breaking bread. We've got a business incubator there where entrepreneurs can come and learn. We've got a theater there. So you may or may not know that the Jubilee Theater was born out of Sojourner Truth Players, which used to be on the corner of Rosedale and Fabens. Right, and so Rudy Eastman, who founded the Jubilee Theater, started over on Rosedale by Texas Wesleyan. Then it moved to downtown Fort Worth, and we don't know how long that they're going to be downtown Fort Worth. So if, in fact, something happens with the Jubilee's current location, they'll have another place in the community to come and kind of perform in front of folks that love them. And the next Leon Bridges won't have to wait until he goes elsewhere to get found and seen. We'll have a place right there in the heart of the community that Leon grew up with to come and perform. So it really is about black culture, making Fort Worth more attractive, not exclusively for black people, but especially for black people, because Fort Worth is a very multicultural city already, and most of the cultures that exist here have a place that they call home, but that's not true for black Fort Worth, and that's what we're trying to create. Now, let me qualify that. I said especially for black people, not exclusively for black people. We want everybody to come to the National Juneteenth Museum. I know Kevin wants everybody to come and hang out at the development that Royal Capitol is building, but they want them to come and get some of the black culture. Listen, I'll give you this quick example. When you go to Joe T's, everybody that comes to Fort Worth says go to Joe T's. Without regard to what you think about the food or the product there, the culture is what it is, and it is unapologetically what it is, right? You're going to hear a mariachi band. You're not going to hear Jay-Z or Beyonce there, and you're not supposed to hear Jay-Z or Beyonce, but there's nowhere in Fort Worth where you go and hear Jay-Z and Beyonce because you're supposed to, right? And we've got to create that. So when you talk about being black in Fort Worth, we really, really are in trying to create a better quality of place for black people in the city of Fort Worth.
I love that. You also mention it from a sense of like open to everyone. How do you, I think Fort Worth gets, if people fly into DFW, the second largest airport in the world, they come here, they're going to spend a weekend and they say, hey, maybe we should go to this Fort Worth section. We literally had some friends do this. Like, oh, we might be in Fort Worth. You want to meet up? And then they decided, oh, our plans changed, so we're not making it out there. Right. So hooks, stockyards is probably one of the greatest hooks. If you want to feel like a Texan in Texas, that's the number one place to go do it. Then you got the National Zoo. And do you think the National Juneteenth Museum, how close can we get it on that priority list?
Yes, and yes.
National Museum.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. There's a key word there with global impact.
Do you think? Do you think it's naturally going to happen to get on that? Like, I'd love to see it to be the third thing on that list. I'm going to stockyards. I'm going to the zoo with my kids.
Yeah,
those are
I'm
both
going to the
family
cultural
friendly.
district.
And then I'm coming to you.
Well, here's the deal. One of the reasons many people come to Fort Worth is because we've got these world-class museums, right? People come specifically for the museums. Listen, Michelangelo's first painting is right here in Fort Worth. Right. And so as a consequence, if you're going to come to Fort Worth and see these world-class museums, we're simply going to add one to the collection. Right. And when you come to this museum, you're going to get a lot more than just a museum. You're going to get this culture, this cultural footprint that we're building on the historic South Side along with that. And so we think the confluence of the growing popularity of Juneteenth, the zealous appetite for black culture in the city of Fort Worth, and the excitement around all the things that we're doing is going to create that place for us. And so now people from Fort Worth, particularly black people in Fort Worth, will not be hesitant to say when people are coming to Dallas, hey, no, you got to come over here and hang out with us. Here's why, and here's what you've got to see. And so from a national perspective, we're really excited about Fort Worth being the center of all this. And I got to plug the city of Fort Worth right now. Our largest benefactor right now to date is still the city of Fort Worth. Right, $15 million and a whole lot of support. So thanks to Councilman Nettles, Mayor Maddie, all of the people on the council for their support. They see this as an opportunity as well. And I will say in my own private conversations that I've had with many of our elected officials, many of them acknowledge and recognize that this community has been neglected for far too long. Right, and are working to make sure that we can overcome some of the things that have happened over the last several decades. So absolute yes, and hell yes.
I love it.
And I would say we need to put a little teaser about connecting all of these places so that people don't all have to drive in their cars to get to them. So I know you and I have discussed circulators that go to the east side as well as the other areas that have been top of mind of where we're going to connect. But if you're going to be downtown and go to the cultural district and then you want to go to that Juneteenth Museum, we need to be able to connect to that as well.
That's right.
Yeah, and I mean the whole thing. We forget Panther Island's coming. Like it's a whole that downtown Main Street strip all the way to Stockyards, all the way down. It left and right. It's going to be a really beautiful.
It slowly but surely, but we're going to put it out there now. We're going to make that. We're manifesting this connection.
Yeah. Eventually, rail, but we know we can't start with rail. So Ann and I were a part of the mayor's commission on transportation. I probably didn't say that right.
Urban rail.
There you go, urban rail conversation. We know that we've got to start somewhere, but eventually we need that rail to come on the east side of I-35. But even before then, to your point, whether it's a bus, a trolley, a mule, a donkey, whatever the case be, bring people to the east side of I-35. And we're going to be pretty intentional. And we're going to guarantee, and you heard it here first, we're going to guarantee that people will not regret their trip to the east of I-35 when they come.
And what people don't know is you see a lot of horses, donkeys on the east side if you get on the other side of 35.
Right. My son happens to be one of the biggest and brightest black cowboys in the city of Fort Worth. He's been covered in Southern Living magazine for the work that he's doing here in Fort Worth.
My wife's the dentist at JPS Stop 6, and some of her patients tie up their horse to the tree and go
Yeah.
get their service.
It's pretty cool. Now it's in vogue again. Right?
I know.
So, that also has something to do with Fort Worth's growing popularity.
Yeah.
Now Fort Worth, we've always embraced the stockyards, but we can do more so now. I was 10 seconds. I was in the stockyards a couple of weeks for the mayor's watch party a couple of weeks ago on a Saturday evening. I hadn't been in the stockyards on a weekend in probably 30 years.
Oh, wow.
I had no clue. Now, I've been there, right? But it's usually for a business dinner on Tuesday night. But it's different. It's different. It's wonderful. Fort Worth is seeing a great deal of momentum, and we're going to make sure that everybody gets to participate in that momentum.
Yeah. Final question from the logistics.
Man. I was just getting warmed up.
Yeah, I mean, you've been great, and I just always appreciate listening. I learn something every time you share insights, and you're just decades of perspective of growing up here and being a true Fort Worthian. As someone who moved here, I just always love to learn about the true full story. I feel like one of those people who used to move to Austin, and it was but too late. All the cool stuff was before. So I feel like you and Ann are those people. So I would love to know logistically on like tickets, purchases, what kind of things that we need for the 19th to 20th. Like what's kind of the expectation on like the Bass Hall? I would love.
Yeah.
Selfish. I would think you don't know about. I've never been to the Bass Hall. I've lived here, so like I feel like this would be a perfect first time to go to the Bass Hall.
You might be surprised, DJ, but that is not uncommon.
Yeah,
I would almost argue that most Fort Worthians have not been to Bass Hall.
Well, yeah, okay.
I
feel better.
Scientifically speaking, you can't prove it, but I would argue most of the people in my circle haven't been there.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yes, if you want to come hang out with us, and please let me formally invite anybody who's listening to this podcast. Thank you again, EJ and Ann, for the opportunity. But please come hang out with us at Freedom Vibes, the National Juneteenth Festival. If you'd like to buy tickets to one of the events at Bass, I'll tell you what, the simplest way to get information about tickets is to go to our website. Okay. You can either go to nationaljuneteenthmuseum.org or you can go to freedomvibes2025.com. That's freedomvibes2025.com. All the information is there. Tickets, ticket outlets, it's all there. But please check out the website. Follow us on social media. Call me. No, don't call me. But buy tickets. We really want to make an emphatic statement to the community that our programming is well received. So we really need to pack out Bass Hall on those 2 nights, and we've got really great artists and entertainers that are coming to help us do it.
Yeah, it sounds like the perfect time to, if you've never experienced, to feel welcome to try.
That's right.
So I'm really excited to.
Let me say really quickly, thank you to Bass Hall for opening their doors to allow us to do this. Right, many venues like Bass Hall would probably not open their doors for this kind of programming, believe it or not. But Bass Hall, they have a great team over there, and they're working with us hand in hand. Right, so y'all come hang out with us.
So on the format of our pod, we always end with wins and losses. We usually speak about our losses first so that we can end on a high note with our wins. So my loss, we mentioned earlier the fact that the County Commissioners Court is meeting at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, and that the City Council this week is meeting at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. And I think that there are a lot of government meetings and a lot of organizations like ISDs that meet on Tuesdays. And so often people have to make a decision about where they're going to be, and they are not able to engage in all of the areas that they would like to engage in because of meetings that happen at the same time and are scheduled on top of each other. I think if we are a city that is really moving forward and wanting to engage people more, we need to start taking a look at this, and we need to realize when we are conflicting with things, and if we truly want people to be engaged, we need to make it more easy to engage and not be conflicting with other organizations that might be having meetings that even some of the council members might want to be participating in. So it's really complicated to schedule around everybody's schedules, but I think that as a city, with things that are directly impacting the residents of this city, we should take a look at this and truly try to schedule things in a way that allows folks to engage on all the things that we need to get citizens' comments on.
My loss is the just lack of awareness that all of this is happening. I ended up speaking at TCU at a Hispanic educator conference, and I actually started my presentation with nothing I was going to share at the conference. I just talked about redistricting, and I literally went, who here lives in Tarrant County? 98% of their hands raised. And I said, who here knows about redistricting? 90% of the hands went down. So I just think this is a loss, because that was one, also the Hispanic population, our community, the we're not voting. So it's just like the awareness, and the loss right now is the Hispanic community's unawareness of this. and the potential of someone like Carlos Flores voting against something like this and harming our people and he just got re-voted in with like 1,800 votes. So I just think like there's just so much more opportunity to amplify Latino voices and build more awareness for them to get more involved and have leaders that represent them.
So my win this week is actually a very personal win. I am going to visit my kids in Sacramento, and it's actually a family reunion. I'm bringing my dad and his wife up from Santa Barbara, my mom down from where she lives, my brother up from LA, and the whole family is gathering in Sacramento. And I'm going to spend 4 glorious days with children that I love, that are grown adults and thriving, and family members that I don't get to see nearly enough. So I'm super excited about that.
I'm happy for you on that. And I'm also going to be able to see family this Memorial Day weekend. My win is that we just had the 817 gather and we had a great collaboration, a lot of new people. And the gather is every third Sunday. If you're a listener and if you've been listening for a long time, and I know some of you have been listening for a long time, come out to the 817 gather, build community while being informed. So we would love to see you. The link is going to be in the bio where you can register an RSVP for the next one. We're thinking of one June, July, and then possibly a party in August because it will be the 5th anniversary of the pod. We've been doing this since 2020, beautiful people. So we were going to have some type of celebration. So if I have your contact, it'd be great to have your name on it.
I need to add a second win. And my second win is that Wesley Kirk has joined the 817 podcast.
Ow! It's going to be beautiful. All right. And so follow us, share with a friend, continue to build this moment. Voices matter. When we have a bigger wave, we can make change. We can beat power. So let's go get it.